Welcome to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. And I'm here with my good friend John Genoese. John, welcome aboard for your first show with us.
Thank you, Brother Frank. Grace and peace to you. I'm very happy to be here.
Good. We're in the book of Job.
Indeed.
And we left off at Job 13 before we took the break with Rabbi. We're going back there. This is a very interesting book because of the fact it talks about human suffering. We all go through it sooner or later. There's nobody exempt from it. And we all wonder where God is in those situations. And Job is no different, okay? Especially when he didn't cause it. You know, I don't want you to think that everything that happens to you is because of something you did. There's evil forces out there working against you. There's selfish people that do foolish things. And then there is times we cause problems. I mean, you know, if you've got a problem with breathing and you're smoking, well, then maybe you're causing the problem. So let's start reading chapter 13.
Okay, Job chapter 13. This is from the New American Standard Translation, which I favor greatly. So this is Job speaking. Behold, my eye has seen all this. My ear has heard and understood it. What you know, I also know. I am not inferior to you. But I would speak to the Almighty. I desire to argue with God. But you smear with lies. You are all worthless physicians. Oh, that you would be completely silent, and that would become your wisdom. Please hear my argument. Listen to the contentions of my lips. Will you speak what is unjust for God? Will you speak what is deceitful for him? Will you show partiality for him? Will you contend for God? Will it be well with you when he examines you, or will you deceive him as one who deceives a man? He will surely reprove you. And if you secretly show partiality, will not his majesty terrify you, and the dread of him fall on you? Your memorable sayings are proverbs of ashes, and your defenses are defenses of clay. Be silent before me, so that I may speak, and then let come on me what may. Why should I take my flesh in my teeth and put my life in my hands? Though he slay me, I will hope in him. Nevertheless, I will argue my ways before him. This also will be my salvation, for a godless man may not come before his presence. Listen carefully to my speech, and let my declaration fill your ears. Behold, now I have prepared my case. I know I will be vindicated. Who will contend with me? For then I would be silent and die. Only two things do not do to me. Now, at this point, Job is speaking to the Lord. Only two things do not do to me. Then I will not hide from your face. Remove your hand from me, and let not the dread of you terrify me. Then call, and I will answer. Or let me speak and reply to me. How many are my iniquities and my sins? Make known to me my rebellion and my sin. Why do you hide your face and consider me your enemy? Will you cause a driven leaf to tremble? Will you pursue the dry chaff? For you write bitter things against me and make me to inherit the iniquities of my youth. You put my feet in the stocks and watch all my paths. You set a limit for the soles of my feet, while I am decaying like a rotten thing, like a garment that is moth-eaten. Wow.
Well, you know, it seems like he comes to a point where he figures it's no sense arguing with these people. Let me talk to God. You know, it's a good point.
It is, but he also, I find it, my attention was captured by what he said is seemingly out of context. When he speaks here in verse 7, he says, will you speak what is unjust for God? And that to me is an extremely insightful thing. Speaking for God or contending for God as if defending God. I heard someone say it made a huge impact on me. I don't defend God, he said. God defends me. And it occurs to me that what we're seeing here is played out so many times, Frank, in so many ways. Even around our little fellowship table, when somebody says something or somebody has an experience that falls outside the realm of our little box, oh boy, does that challenges us, that causes us to become defensive and begin defending not God, but our system. Not defending God, but our current concept of him. And what was happening to Job is clearly outside the realm of their experience. And so what they need to do is put Job in some kind of bed of Procrustes, saw off his arms and legs so that his experience is nicely and easily compartmentalized in their little God box.
Well, you know, when you said that, and I hadn't had that down in my notes, but I thought immediately of Samson's father. When he burned down the altars and they came to get him, Samson, his father says, do you have to defend God? Meaning to say if he's God, he can deal with my son Samson himself. And it's very interesting.
God acquits himself well. He really does.
Yeah, that's probably hundreds, if not thousands of years later. You know, and very interesting.
But they make Job wrong because nothing else fits. These horrible things are happening to Job seemingly at random. And as you pointed out earlier in the show, in an earlier episode, Job is probably the oldest book in the Bible. I find it interesting that the very first book, the oldest book in the Bible, is the one that presents God the most enigmatically. And I'm fascinated by that. That is as if to say, God is opening the door to understanding with, you're not going to understand me.
Yeah, you know, and what it's interesting is that every one of them trip on things that are true about God.
Indeed.
But their explanation of it or their attitude towards Job about it is completely wrong. Okay?
As we'll see later. We'll see how wrong it was, in fact.
You know,
got them into very serious trouble.
You know, he says, more or less, and he's looking out for them because he's saying, I think in verse 10, you know, you'll be in trouble with him. Okay?
Yes.
And you know, he says that, do you really think this? Do you think that? I'm amazed that so early on in, we'll say, humanity, that they've had some real interesting pieces. I mean, they had no scriptures, okay, if this is the first book, okay? Everything was oral until it was recorded years later. They didn't have all these fine teachers and internets and all of this stuff, yet secretly, inwardly, it's just like our inborn conscience. They knew right from wrong in certain areas.
Well, there was, I think, a lot known. I know you and I have had some, in other contexts, we've had some discussions about that when Job lived relative to Abraham. Was he before Abraham? Was he after Abraham? And that's not really a settled question, but as we're going to go on, I guess, in chapter 14 and 15, we'll start to see what some of these names are. But I agree. The knowledge of God was probably, I guess, came from Noah. It would have to have come from Noah, because all of these people live after Noah, and everybody that lived before Noah was gone.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking forward to the evolution of thought here as we go forward in the book.
Well, what's interesting is in this chapter, and is that he knows without a doubt that they are completely wrong, and he's not going to accept the conviction. And that's very good, okay? People need to rest in what they believe and correct. God will correct them. I'll give you an example. We have a dear friend, and she was a nun for, I don't know, 30 years maybe. And probably at the time when she was going to step out of the order, for an obvious reason, she had an argument with God. It was very brief. You know, she said, "Who are you that you always have to do it your way?" And you know what? He answered her. He said, "I am God." she like covered her mouth and like, who do I think I'm speaking to? Okay? So God will answer in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through some person, through scripture, you know, or, you know, maybe even audible in some cases, or at least in your inner audible. So, you know, at this point, you know, he's really wrestling with that. What am I doing with these people who are just convicting me? They always have an answer like they know it. Why don't we go on to 14?
Before we do, one more brief thing to point out is how certain Job was that he would be vindicated.
Yeah, that's wonderful, isn't
it? That's an incredible thing to me.
And as we go on, you're going to find out he's actually giving us sort of how he's going to be vindicated, which is amazing.
Indeed. Yes, that's that. Yes.
This here, 14, is Job basically is asking, how have I sinned? Prove it to me. Okay?
Okay. This is chapter 14. Man who is born of woman is short-lived and full of turmoil. Like a flower he comes forth and withers. He also flees like a shadow and does not remain. You also open your eyes on him and bring him into judgment with yourself. Who can make the clean out of the unclean? No one. Since his days are numbered, the number of his months is with you. And his limits you have set so that he cannot pass. Turn your gaze from him that he may rest, until he fulfills his day like a hired man. But there's hope for a tree, when it's cut down, that it will sprout again, and its shoots will not fail. Though its roots grow old in the ground and its stump dies in the dry soil, at the scent of water it will flourish and put forth sprigs like a plant. But man, he dies and lies prostrate. Man expires, and where is he? As water evaporates from the sea and rivers become parched and dried up, so man lies down and does not rise until the heavens are no longer. He will not awake or be roused out of his sleep. Oh, that you would hide me in Sheol, that you would conceal me until your wrath returns to you, that you would set a limit for me and remember me. If a man dies, will he live again? All the days of my struggle I will wait until my change comes. You will call and I will answer you. You will long for the work of your hands. For now you number my steps. You do not observe my sin, my transgression, sealed up in a bag. You wrapped up my iniquity. But the falling mountain crumbles away and the rock moves from its place. Water wears away stones. Its torrents wash away the dust of the earth, so you destroy man's hope. You forever overpower him and he departs. You change his appearance and send him away. His sons achieve honor, but he does not know it. Or they become insignificant, but he does not perceive it. But his body pains him and he mourns only for himself. Oof. Dark.
Well,
how dark.
You know,
I better write though.
I guess at this point, John, he probably was thinking that my troubles will end if my life ends, and therefore, you know, I'm better off dead than alive. Do you get that kind of feeling from him?
This is the feeling that I get from chapter 14 is that chapter 14 is everything it means to be a person of faith who's in great pain, because we see two elements at work and they conflict with one another, and he goes from one to the other back and forth as if you can see that he's of two minds and they're fighting. The first one, where he has this beautiful picture of you will call and I will answer you. You will long for the work of your hands. For now you number my steps. You do not observe my sin. My transgression is sealed up in a bag. How prophetic is that? That someday, he knows that someday, and as Jeremiah said, that there will be a time where God will blot out iniquity and put it away. So Job, right here at the beginning, is prophesying this. But then he talks about there being hope for a tree. When it's cut down, that could come back again. But when a man dies, a man dies. That's the end. So we see this evolution of thought, this sort of breaking forth in their, what at that time must have been their traditional understanding, that when you die you sleep, and then at the end of all things he talks about his change come, his renewal, So I see he's of two minds, and they're fighting. And that fight, he's expatiating that fight as he speaks. You can hear the contest that's taking place in his soul.
Well, you know, some people would describe our trouble in our lives is like a tree during a drought. It then has to go real deep. And so right now he's not thinking about sleeping, he's not thinking about eating, he's not thinking about his business, he's really going deep. And as he goes deep with God, even in his argument, he's finding out more and more and more. It's like God's talking to him in spite of the fact that he doesn't think he is, because he's not doing what he wants him to do, is relieve him. But he's taking him deeper and deeper, you know?
And you're right, his inner revelation is building. And his relationship with God is piercing through. He also points out something here at the end in verses 21 and 22.
Yeah, I wrote that too.
That I think is very worthy of note, because when we know people in pain, and sometimes we are like Job's friends with people in great pain, we're irritated at their selfishness. And yet, what do you think about when you have a bad toothache or a bad headache? Like he says here, his body pains him and he mourns only for himself. I don't know that that's a choice, Frank. I think that that's the human condition.
Self-preservation.
The more pain that we're in, the more self-centered we become. When I have a toothache, I can't help thinking about anything but that toothache. I said that wrongly. I can't seem to think about anything but that toothache. It's a challenge for me to think about anything else. And so this kind of reminds me of my own times of self-centeredness when I was in great pain. Doesn't excuse the actions of selfishness, but it certainly makes them understandable and helps me respond with compassion to the person who's really being self-centered because they're in great pain.
Well, yeah, there's a situation here that you have to look at. There are those people who are self-centered, and they're very selfish, okay? And they're always looking at what other people have. They're envious, they're jealous. That's sinful. But self-preservation is a whole different story. I mean, even the New Testament would say, you know, love your neighbor as yourself. In fact, the Old Testament says it too, okay?
Indeed.
And therefore, it's saying is you need to have a healthy attitude, okay, and a healthy lifestyle. You know, the book that I just shared with you, I think, was what it was the title. It was the title of Hurting People Hurt People.
Right.
Okay?
Hurt people, right?
Okay.
Exactly.
Now Job is trying not to hurt his friends, but later on he starts to confront them a lot more stronger than we see as we go along.
I'm not sure, not to have a pointless dispute here, but earlier in chapter 13, he says, you are all worthless physicians. I don't know that he's really thinking about their feelings too much when he says, when he tells them things like, you're worthless physicians, you smear with lies. Your memorable sayings are proverbs of ashes.
But you know, if it's true, then it's in love. Because when you share truth rather than flattery, instead of, you know, flattery is a lie. Flattery is trying to get them onto your side, okay? Truth is truth, and you have to deal with truth. So I'm telling you, you're worthless, okay? You're not helping me at all, okay? So don't continue it, you know? Don't continue it.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I would like to be the kind of man someday that can actually hear that in truth. Or, I mean, I would hope I wouldn't have to hear it, but if I do have to hear it, that I would be able to take it in that spirit.
Criticism can be very helpful. Most people put their shield of defense up, and they don't hear it any more than the fact that you're challenging me. I got to give you an answer. No, you don't. You need to digest it. And if it's not true, throw it away. If it's true, start working on it.
A bar of gold is a bar of gold, even if it comes wrapped in an oil-stained paper bag.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
still a bar of gold.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah, so that's very important. I like the
sir.
part that he says in 17 about a pouch. You know, on the Passover, we have the pouch with 3 pieces of matzah in it,
Ah,
and the middle matzah is broken and hidden.
the afikomen, yes.
Yep. I mean, it's a symbol there of somebody is going to be broken for your sake.
Mm. You know,
Okay.
that's New Covenant country, but
Yeah.
it's here.
Yeah.
It's all hidden here.
Can the dead live again? Okay? What a wonderful statement, you know, for a man in his position at his time in history. So, do you think we said enough here?
You can actually study this chapter for a year and continue to draw gold out of it. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, we can move on. But
Well, let's go to 12
never
on
exhaust
this.
it.
Read 12 again.
Verse 12.
Yeah, most powerful.
So man lies down and does not rise until the heavens are no longer. The until the heavens are no longer, he will not awake nor be aroused out of his sleep.
And tell me what this word until means.
Wow. I think we know what until means in terms of it's a statement that when the subsequent condition is fulfilled, then the previous condition, the antecedent condition, will be fulfilled. So the proposition is man lies down and does not rise until. So implying that when the heavens are no longer, man will rise. Now, you and I have had many talks about the subject of Judeo-Christian eschatology, the last things, and we talked about the last day. And on the last day, when the heavens are no more, that's when we believe the resurrection comes.
And we know that the whole thing to do with Yom Kippur is to repent of our sins so that we can remain in the book of life.
Indeed.
Okay?
The
So
sea
we
of
won't-
forgetfulness.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
We'll cover that further some other time, or maybe further on in this study. But if you want to go on to 15, I did have a little bit more on 14.
Well, please. Please.
Okay.
This is so rich.
Yeah.
This is it's a bottomless well of truth.
You know, here in 14, he says that who can purify us? Okay? There's no person that can purify us.
Right.
Okay? So it's up to God to purify us. Okay? And you know, there's so much here on death and resurrection. Can the dead lie again, live
Right.
again? Okay? So he's indicating what? Then 15, he goes on to say, furthermore, about that. I can't believe there's so much here on the resurrection. You can call and I will answer, and you will yield to me your handwork. He's saying is that I'll call, and you, the Creator, will recognize your handwork.
And you will long for it. In this particular translation, he says, you will long for it.
Yeah.
If we had time, we would do a study of that word long for, what the Hebrew says there. And perhaps we can do that at another time. But I find it interesting that this is probably the first mention of God's desire for his creation.
Yeah.
You will long for the work of your hands.
Yeah, it's really great.
And so here he says in verse 4, who can make the clean out of the unclean? No one, yet in verse 17, my transgression is sealed up in a bag, and you wrap up my iniquity. So he knows God. He knows God, and he knows God, and I would assert that this type of thing indicates that he knows God probably better than Abraham did in a way. Now that's startling, I know. It's startling.
Well, you know, the beginning text, okay, if they were contemporaries, okay, indicates that he's the most righteous person there is.
Yeah.
Okay? Which, you know, to me, part of righteousness is, or the main part for me, righteousness is being right with God based on what you believe, because it says without faith it's impossible to please God.
That's right. That's a new covenant understanding that we have. But in the old covenant, we can derive that same truth because we look at a critical moment, at Abraham's critical moment, right? We're told in Genesis that Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness.
And what did he believe him about?
He believed him about Isaac.
Yes. And he believed that God could raise him from the dead.
And he believed that God would give him a son.
Well,
Believed God.
we're going to have to wrap it up on this chapter, but it's been such a great expansion of both our understandings. And if you want to watch the previous shows about Job, go to www.thefutureofisrael.org. If you have any comments or questions, send it to me at info@thefutureofisrael.org. We're here all the time, same place, same network, every week, and we're studying Job till we finish it. It is important to understand how dangerous it is to patrol around out there without God. So be back with us again. Shalom. Be a blessing wherever you go, and enjoy the fruits of God.
Amen.